All right, what is up, crypto junkies? Welcome to another live stream. Today, we're going to be talking about storytelling. I'm waiting for my guest Grant from Muse Storytelling, which, if you've been following along with the Hex project, the Hex product rather, and where they're at, they're actually in the midst of filming a documentary. So I wanted to talk to him about that. And one of the big reasons why I wanted him on is because if you guys didn't know, I absolutely love storytelling. So storytelling is one of those really powerful pieces that it just moves people to do the most amazing and, unfortunately, not so amazing things, right? Storytelling leads to wars. Storytelling leads to cultures that are completely on two separate ends of belief systems, value systems, fill in a blank kind of worldviews, right? And they can bring those people together. Like, stories is one of the most important pieces of, like, and still the fabric core pieces of humanity, right? When you set aside the money stuff and everything else that's materialistic, is at the end of the day, stories are the pieces and the glue that allow us to come back together again and unite together, right? And so I think that there is a really yeah, I think that there's a really important place for this within our culture, and especially like right now, there's so many important things going on that you know, those who can tell stories, I think really that's one of the truer currencies, right? Money and fiat and all that, you know, that comes and goes, but the ability to be able to tell stories, the ability to be able to persuade, move somebody into whatever it is that you're trying to do is absolutely incredible. So we'll give it a couple of minutes and let Grant jump in. Yeah, okay. I think he should be on in just a few here. So how's everybody doing? What's up? What's up, Prime? What's up, Finn? Great to see you guys here. I know a lot of people, there's a good amount of crossover from the Hex community, so I appreciate you guys all jumping in. You know, I jump on their streams, they jump on this stream. So thank you guys for being here. Office is a mess, but you know, I got video up anyways. Moving offices, so got that going on. Yeah, and if you think back in time, like clearly there was a point in time when a lot of people were a lot better at telling stories than us, right? Because look at like Greek mythology, and we're assuming that that's just story, not true events, right? So anyways, I got Grant on now. Let's add him into the stream.
Hey!
Grant, what's up, man? How are you? Move over. Excellent. So this is the first time we're chatting, actually. Just so everybody knows. Yes,
sir.
But I think that we have kindred hearts here because we're both huge into storytelling. You know, one of the things that we've never chatted, so I'll kind of give you my little story and rundown is I discovered internet marketing after a failed attempt of doing runway modeling, go figure. Moved back home with mom and dad, and my dad was like, hey, there's all these guys making this crazy money online. And I'm like a kid at the time. I don't know, I'm 20 something, right? He's like, there's all these people making all this money online. Like, and I'm like, what are you talking about? This is bullshit, right? Like, this is some scam stuff he's talking to me about, right? Because he had, I mean, we had our fair share of MLM run-ins at that point. But, you know, it's your family, right? So you listen. And anyway, so he turns me on to like the sales letter. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't actually real. You know that, right? This is just like, this is words persuade, you know, to persuade you to feel a certain way so that you buy this product. And this is like early days of the internet, we're talking, when sales letters and stuff were just starting to come out. So anyways, I dove head first into it. And then the place that I landed, because it was like, you know, in digital marketing, online marketing, it's like, I think the end game where everybody ends up is you need to make more sales, right? And so you naturally end up in two places. You end up in copywriting and storytelling, and you end up in NLP. And both are required, I think, to tell a great story. Whereas I think maybe now some of that's gotten lost, like people's understanding of like neuro-linguistic programming and what it was meant and created to do, and some of the powers behind using words like that, I think is a little bit lost nowadays. But you know, I think that that's where most people that end up mastering that craft end up spending most of their time, is copywriting, storytelling, and interweaving that with just natural mechanisms of the brain that kind of are there, right? Which we'll call, that's a nice way of saying NLP, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah, go ahead.
so within that journey, then, what's been the most fantastic part of it? What's the most satisfying? Where do you find yourself most fulfilled?
Well, I already kind of dipped into telling stories to get people to buy my shit. And so now the most fulfilling piece is like being able to use that to actually move people to go within and do something different, right? So peak performance, like how do I be the best version of myself today? And anyone that's been in my Discord for the last 3-4 years, you know that's like my beating drum. That's my mantra is how do we show up and just be the best versions of ourselves today? And I understand that like now that's kind of like a popular thing that like life coaches and stuff do, and everyone's helping you kind of find and discover that, right? But yeah, like that's essentially it is I guess maybe using those powers for good, even though I don't really think I honed in that well on copywriting. I think I was wildly mediocre at copywriting and writing like sales letters and stuff like that. But the piece that I was always fascinated the most with and that I got excited about the most is telling the story. So I would get, my copy wouldn't convert and it wouldn't be as great as it could be because I get so lost in the story that I forgot that we got to close and we got to start bringing in different elements of the story or of the copy. So it's like the story aspect would take up way too much, right? And so it's about like cutting that shorter and shorter, you know. So anyways, let's take a big step back. In case there's people on this stream that don't know who you are, give like a quick little rundown. We'll go through the site. We'll talk about the highest of stakes. I want to talk about everything with you guys with the Hex documentary and everything like that. But yeah, just give everyone a quick rundown in case they don't know.
I'm Grant. I'm co-directing a feature-length documentary for Muse Storytelling, and that the story of the documentary is exploring the cryptocurrency space through the eyes and experience of Hex, the Hex community, and Richard Hart. And so we've begun our principal production. We're still in our story finding. And so we welcome any thoughts, feedback, interest, and leads that the community has around people and stories that they find fascinating, that is true and authentic to the Hex experience. And so we've established a website, thehighestofstakes.com, where there's a survey on there that you can fill out, and you can submit your story. You can submit the story of a friend or family member, fellow Hexican, and or people within the community who are skeptics, or who are, the Lex Luthor to Superman, and that is the people who are beating Hex up the most, because we need to engage and fully represent the authenticity of this ride that the Hexican community is on. And I know that at times they have felt very much either misunderstood or more nefariously attacked. And so we need to have conversation with those people that they've engaged with. So we welcome that and encourage you go to thehighestofstakes.com and submit your story, a story of a friend or family member or someone that you know is playing a pivotal role in the existing story of Hex and the future story of Hex as well.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I can't think of a better project within crypto to cover outside of Hex. There's a lot of really boring stuff like paint drawing. There's a lot of what we've seen in the last years, like a lot of like I'm calling it like the VC bros. It's like the VC bro circle, where maybe one of them got in or enough of them had gotten into enough DAOs and projects and stuff, and that now they're just kind of scratching each other's back. So a lot of DeFi, I mean, there's thousands of projects in DeFi now. A lot of those really aren't that interesting because it's like, oh, it's the same guy who did this one. Oh, and he's in the DAO over here. Oh yeah, and he's made a bunch of money over here. Oh, and he owns, half of CryptoPunks. Like, oh, okay. Like that's not really much of a story. Like the story in that is like, hey, I made a shitload of money. Look at me. And that is inspiring. Like, don't get me wrong. Like when somebody comes out, like obviously if that didn't work, like the make money online niche would not exist if that didn't work. So we all know it works. Like just go on YouTube and type in Shiba Inu and you'll see how many NFT millionaires and billionaires have been created over the last couple of months. So yeah, clearly money sells. So let's just take a step back though and like cover the history here. So you guys have traveled to over 60 countries. I'm reading the bio here. On the highest of stakes. So you've worked for Apple, Four Seasons, NFL, Fujifilm, TEDx, United Nations. United Nations is the one I'm most interested to hear about, if you can share any story there. Apple, Nike, and 10,000 filmmakers, 4 Emmys. Like this is pretty crazy to have you guys involved with little old crypto.
Yeah,
I mean, like that was my first thought.
Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable with the chest pounding. I know it's necessary, at least in giving background and credence to who we are and the level of the intensity that we're going to bring to the storytelling, production value, intention, and resource. So you know what I mean. So I appreciate that and welcome that. But yeah, I mean, we didn't do that in the last 30 days. Right, like that's the lifetime of the studio, and it was born out of a dorm room in Toronto, Canada, where Patrick, the co-director and founder of Muse, knew that he wanted to study psychology and change the world, and in his study found that story moves people more than any other mechanism, and as a result of that, knowing that if that's going to be the most effective way to move people, then he shifted his focus from psychology into storytelling, and did so by filming weddings because it was the most affordable way to be able to buy equipment and subsidize that lifestyle. And so he started getting in wedding film and learning all of the cinematography and all of the techniques and all of those things, and then had great success. Canon in Canada licensed his footage and created a national commercial from it. And he was still a student working and operating out of his dorm room. Then he saw an emptiness in that genre of storytelling and decided that he wanted to do something different. And so there was a prototype camera that he had gotten a hold of through Canon. And he said, listen, I want to film your wedding, but I'm going to do it the way that I want to cover it. I'm going to do it for free. And so he filmed a wedding in a way that a wedding had never been filmed before. He told a story that just happened to take place at a wedding, as opposed to the other way around. And that's not a semantic difference. It's a seismic in experience in the way that played out. And so as a result of that, then that piece that he created went viral, and the whole filmmaking and wedding film industry took notice. And then there was an NFL executive who was creeping Vimeo and watching wedding films and saw this work and was like, hold on. This is very different. This is their story here. I wonder what you could do with football. And so they invited him to the NFL Combine, and that one shoot led to a 100 shoot day contract with the NFL and filming all access at the Super Bowl, and having unprecedented access and invitation into telling and creating a story in a way that no one else had done. And then that work bled. The wedding and film and football worlds merged when an executive at CBS Showtime saw that work and said, could you be the director of photography for a documentary that I'm doing on the Army-Navy football rivalry? That goes on to win several Emmys and launches Opportunity and Network. And then corporations started taking notice of the work that we were doing. And alongside the filmmaking, there's always been in the DNA and the core of who we are as a studio, a desire to lift up and teach other filmmakers how to be stronger in their work. And so there's always been this educational component for, the last 15 years, in parallel to our filmmaking, we've always taught other filmmakers, and that has always gained the interest and support of camera manufacturers like Canon, who's invited us to teach in countless countries around the world, and Fujifilm, who's invited us to teach, as well. So, so that's who we are, and the reason that we've gotten into the work that we're doing and the way that we're doing it, and that's what led us to work with the United Nations. And I was not specifically on that project, but Patrick was, and he went and helped them with their story structure and the way that they are engaging in a lot of the things that they want to see, the change in effectiveness that they want to have in the world, and that they were using, as many people do, features and benefits as an effort to sell rather than story. And so he did workshop with them and teaching them how they could, if they just restructure the way and style of their communication, they could be much more effective. And so that's kind of what's led us to this opportunity. And we've been looking for several years now for that next completely original project that was going to be outside of an invitation from any client, to tell a story that is completely ours, that's original. And we have turned down hundreds, if not thousands, of story leads, people that have said, hey, here's a story that transcends. Here's something that's worth giving a feature length look at, right? Because we create short form passion projects with some frequency. But if you're going to invest a full hour and a half to 2 hours of an audience member's time, that story really needs to transcend. It really needs to have some depth, some richness, some timeliness to it. And when we were introduced to this idea and were invited to have a discovery call with Richard, we got off the call a bit shell-shocked.
Really?
Yeah. Whoa,
good
absolutely.
or bad?
I mean, because you spent probably 45 minutes with him on Telegram, having really known very little about him other than someone giving you an elevator speech bio. You know what I mean? It was like, hey, he's done this, retired at 23, traveled the world for 5 years living out of a hotel, found cryptocurrencies, started making price calls, saw all of the flaws in it, decided to create his own, is destined to make an impact in this world. How are you interested in a phone call? You know what I mean? Or whatever. Let's do it. You know what I mean? Or whatever. We had zero conversation about cryptocurrency. It was all about vibe, and it was all about longevity and the way that he greets the world, and all of those kind of ambitions. And then we said, hey, as we continue to explore this, would you be down for us filming with you? And he said, well, let's explore it. And we thought we'd just go to his house and sit and have a conversation with him. Little do we know all about OPSEC and the all of the complications that get invited in around noobs. But then he met us in Estonia, and after spending several days with him, we were feeling him out, he was feeling us out, and we came back and as a team decided, is this something that we want to dedicate the next several years of our life to, in terms of production, post-production, and promotion. And ultimately we looked at this story and said, this is one that we feel is appropriate with regard to the level of interest, intrigue, access, and inevitability in terms of what blockchain is going to do in our lives. And this is a really good invitation into that world, and will invite a lot of people into educating themselves around the potential inevitability and possibility of blockchain technology. And so it makes us excited to be a part of helping accelerate that introduction through the lens of this story, which is just gripping.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, man. I want to go all the way back to where we were talking about how long you're we were talking about your story, and I was just curious to see how long you guys had done it or have been doing this, but I don't even think that matters. We're so far ahead of that now. So I guess the next best question would be, okay, so in the start, you guys were pretty captivated by this story, and you've heard a lot of other crypto stories. The most relevant question would be, how has that stacked up to your expectations or what you thought? Has there been any twists or turns that have happened so far that you weren't expecting, good or bad?
Yeah, well, so yes. What's interesting is, to your point about how many of these stories are basically as intriguing as watching paint dry, the question becomes, how do we extend the story from ones and zeros into, a human story, right? An experience story. And we think that the Hex origin story, and then the experience of being a part of the Hex community, is one that does a great job of that, right? It invites in conversation, thought, challenge, success, failure, success, right? Again and again, repeatedly, in a way that's going to transcend the ones and zeros. And probably the easiest low-hanging fruit in terms of demonstration of that would be, Nomic's announcement of their recalculation of market cap on behalf of Hex in the last couple of days. And as a result of that, dropped everything that was already on the schedule for the next several days, and dispatched a team to be with RG3 last night, and we're visiting with Clay on Friday. So, we're
that's
in
cool.
it now to win it in terms of,
Yeah.
ourselves, in wanting to follow the story as it is actually happening, as it's unfolding, as it's playing out, instead of always needing to be in that reflective voice where we're kind of, looking back on something that's already played out and then trying to tell that part of the story. So, and assuredly there are going to be a host of other experiences that are going to happen during our production where, we can't anticipate them. We can only, well, I couldn't say that. We'll do our best to anticipate them, right? In every instance, we're a part of it. But I guess I can't say definitively what those are most likely to be at this point, right? Like, we could be surprised as the community is surprised, as the world is surprised, in terms of development and things happen. So, I mean, in any countless number of ways. I mean, imagine if Congress legislates some, crazy new regulation that affects this community immediately. Or imagine if, I mean, there are any number of hypotheticals that we could start.
How do you guys think your response was to the nomics thing in terms of like dispatching the team? How big is the Muse Storytelling team, by the way?
So we're a nimble team. I would say that at our core, there's probably 5 of us that are dedicated to this project almost in singularity. But we are a working and functional filmmaking team that extends into 12 or 15 team members. So right, so there's a need to continue to sustain the work of the studio in parallel with the documentary. But in terms of principal talent, you have the focus of a team of about 5 of us that are always on this and just chomping at the bit to get this thing everything that we possibly can get just sing. So
it's going to be interesting to see how it goes because I was actually right before this I was trying to dig up. I have some original training or recordings from Joseph Campbell talking about the hero's journey, which was always something that I was really pulled to. And talking about like the different elements of it, because I think when there was a period of time for like 2 years where I would just listen to that on a monthly basis and just so my subconscious could digest it. And I tend to do weird things like that to where when I dive into a new topic, I go really, really crazy. And so I'm like listening to it when maybe I'm in a float tank, or I'm listening to it when like I'm driving, when I'm consciously doing something. So it's just subconsciously making its way past the critical factors of the brain and working its magic. I couldn't find it because I wanted to be like prepared on like, I guess to a degree on like hero's journey pieces. But when I read that work, I realized the mistake that I make and the mistake that a lot of people make, which is you shouldn't really try and put yourself in the place of the hero. Not anymore. I just don't think that really works because everyone wants to be the hero of their own story. So it's better to be Yoda. It's better to be the guide that helps the hero that needs direction, right? That's a safer place to be than trying to show up and be the hero. And I think speaking of Richard for a second, I think he does an okay job of that. I think he oversteps the line and puts himself as the hero role sometimes. And then there's other times where he kind of falls back and again, he's the guide. But I think overall, like he's definitely one of the most interesting characters that you could ever want to film, because I think he's really, really dynamic from the standpoint that, okay, let's just look at the history of Hex. Like that guy's been pretty bombarded with bullshit since this thing started. And it's like, you got to ask yourself, how would you be behaving right now if this were you? And we can take a look around and we can get a decent idea of this, because how has most people reacted to a year plus of lockdowns? A lot of people, you've gotten to see like who they actually are, who they really are. A lot of people, even myself, I'm guilty of this, of becoming like hardened edges, more crass, like not so smooth, not so gentle in certain conversations. You kind of start to lose that ability when you stop, when you stop talking and communicating and traveling for like a year and a half. I noticed when I started traveling again, just how rusty I was, but I can see in him that there's like really a couple different sides, right? There's the side where he's constantly like being thrown shit at him. And so he's on the defensive, and he's bouncing between that with like an empathetic character, more of like that Yoda character, where it's like, okay, let's remember the Sense Foundation stuff. Let's remember, all my previous works that I've done and how I've been trying to help. And then there's like a little brother in there, like to where like brotherly love. And then there's just overall, I'd say goodness, right? Like compassion for other people. Like he's good at sniffing out like what situation he's in and being able to adapt and adopt himself to that situation. And I think that's like, that's good character traits to have, like to where regardless of what situation you're in, you're able to kind of mold yourself to that situation and have the most favorable outcome, right? I think that's the best any of us could really hope for in situations and in life. But is that assumption of mine that I've noticed from watching like, dozens of his live streams and stuff, is that pretty accurate, or am I off the ball on that, or what would you say? Because you spent time with them.
Yeah, we have. And I would say that the Richard that you see on live stream is the Richard that you get in person. It's not as though there's a switch and that there's, something that there's an alternate persona that's being presented, on stream. I think that he, like all of us, is nuanced. There are times when has more energy. There are times when he's more defensive. There's times when he's more optimistic. There, each of those things are true. And generally, I think to your point, feel adaptive to whatever the environment is presenting in the moment, right? Like it's not out of balance to what that is.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Like, and you can tell, like, and I think that's a big difference between somebody who's traveled and somebody who hasn't. Like I haven't, you guys have been to a lot of countries. I don't know how many Richard's been to, but I've been to maybe 20. And I'll tell you what, you got to figure out pretty quick that like, let me speak to the manager doesn't work. And that's like a summary. That's like a summary of how traditionally Americans operate and act in a foreign country when they're not happy with what they're going through, right? And you see that in just about every country, though. Like if you go stay at a big hotel, you will see at least one of those. Let me talk to the managers, which is like a running joke for me, anyways, because I think it's absolutely hilarious. I almost start laughing when I hear it. But yeah, I think that's an important trait to have, and that's indicative of somebody who's actually traveled, so they've gotten to experience culture versus be told what culture is. So they are better at actually navigating in the trenches those types of situations,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a pure analogy, but I think to your point about those of us who were traveled or even in just general social situations after post lockdown. It's a little bit like putting a jagged rock in a tumbler. It's going to take a little bit of time to get those hard edges off, right? Like we just need those rotations. We need those reps in order to get back to our previously polished selves.
100%. Absolutely. Okay, so now let me pry a little bit. Where are things at? Like, what have you guys shot recently? Like outside of the Nomics bomb that kind of just dropped. Which, I mean, I was one of those people who saw that coming. That was not like really that big of a surprise to me. And just to cover that and I guess give my perspective for those of you who are on the stream is, they're a private company, they're a private site. I think they're open to doing whatever they want. I think they've been better than every other aggregator. But I like the challenge of like, okay, should you even care? Two, maybe build your own. There's been plenty of people that have made great money now in Hex or maybe just coming to the Hex community and are seeing this and want to do something about it. Three, make a completely different way to measure a coin's quote unquote importance or value outside of market cap and the traditional metrics. I think that's it. But anyway, so that's kind of my summary of the whole situation. I'm pretty indifferent towards it, yes or no, just because like I don't personally think those things matter. Maybe it matters for onboarding, maybe it matters for somebody who doesn't really understand crypto. But if you could just teach somebody the basics of Bitcoin and the history of crypto on like a napkin, and then tell them, here's this thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Well, it should be pretty straightforward from there. I don't really think that aggregator site is completely necessary to close somebody in on the value or importance of a project. I think at that point you're probably leaning on factors that aren't that important, right? Like look how much it's gone up. Look at the percentage. Like I don't think those are important metrics, but again, money does sell. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. But yeah, any other, like, what have you guys recently shot? What is the most recent update?
In the last couple of weeks, we've been with Richard in Denmark. We were in Copenhagen with him, where he did a meetup, and then he did a promotional photography shoot on behalf of the documentary. And each of those experiences were fantastic and wonderful. And we had an additional on-camera conversation with him as well, as we will continue to do throughout the entire process with him. And then we went to Boston and sat and visited with some Hexicans there and had on-camera conversation. And we've onboarded some additional producing help for our team, which is absolutely necessary, as we had already, we hit the ground running in production for this. And so, the team was a bit underwater with all of the opportunities and the way that we were going about this or whatever. So it's nice to be onboarding that additional resource. And then we head to London to cover the celebration of the 2-year anniversary of Hex on December 2nd. So that's coming up in just a couple weeks as well. We have secured a motion control robot that will be used in helping us unpack and create visual sequences to explain the complicated vocabulary and foundation of blockchain, cryptocurrency, some of the vocabulary that's used to communicate in and among community and those kinds of things. So we're very much looking forward to doing that, to be able to implement and create art-directed scenes in a way that,
I like that.
Rather than just leaning on motion control animations or motion graphics, as might have been the larger instinct. We think that this will really elevate the visuals as well as the experience and do it in a clean way. So, I mean, we're just, we've engaged in and identified who we would like to score the film and be a part of that.
Who is that? Because I've heard a lot of names dropped. I've heard Denzel Washington, Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
Are we talking about that? Are we talking about that?
Those are the names that are being tossed around, if the film is defined a narrator, right? Like if there needs.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misheard you.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So this would be someone who would help us compose the score, who would write.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So that's fantastic. So I mean, we've established, we have this spreadsheet of names and leads that the community has offered us, and we ask that you continue to support that you offer your thoughts and feedback with regard to who you think that we should be having conversation with, that help represent this story in a powerful way. And so we're having lots of discovery calls and exploring all kinds of opportunities there. So yeah, I mean, we're definitely off to the races, but realize that this is a marathon and not a sprint. So we're looking at long days and many days in order to fully wring the towel dry, and seeing just exactly what all of the potential leads for story are, and then it's our job to mine all of that for the gold that is the most compelling story that's going to represent the experience so far and speak to both my mom and my 12-year-old son, right? Like it's gonna engage each of them.
Well, I'm interested to see how you guys end up breaking it down. Like, how's that kind of first phase or first section up until like the halfway point going to go? Is it going to be like you drop them into Hex, but then, oh wait, let's take a step back and let's talk about Bitcoin and blockchain and this technology that birthed Hex? Are we going to be following individual threads and storylines throughout the entire movie of Richard as a character, as these other investors as characters? So I'm really interested to see like how you're going to actually play that out. You know what I mean? I'm excited. I'm excited to see like the actual storyline itself. So I do have a question. You guys are taking like allowing people to submit stories right now for both the London event and obviously on the website. Is there like stories that are really standing out that are like, holy cow, that are like really hitting hard on the feels?
I would say you were always welcoming additional, and I would,
Okay. So the
would
goal hasn't come yet, maybe.
No, I wouldn't say that. But I would. I mean, I would also say that it's premature for me to share too deeply any specific story.
Yeah, I'm not asking for
right.
that. Yeah.
Like in terms of not wanting to create and spoil. I'll tell you this. This community is rich with story. Like 100%.
Yeah, it is. It is, isn't it?
Yes. That's so in addition to how compelling Richard is as a character, so too is the community. Like it's full of characters in the traditional sense that that like my stepfather might use that word. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, have you ever met Jim? Man, he's a character, right?
Yeah.
Like that kind of word. Yeah.
Okay. So do you think you're going to struggle with how do we fit all these characters into the story? Are you going to run into that problem, do you think? Because we still need
run into that question. Like,
okay, because we still need an antagonist, right? We still need an enemy. We don't even have that yet.
We would welcome to find, we are having conversations with several, but we were welcome to find that one, right? That is like really going to anchor and represent and be the lead on that. So yes,
right.
That's definitely necessary. And the truth of the matter is that the strength of this story is in its structure and in its edit, right? Like,
yeah,
there's already too much. But
interesting. So how long is it going to be, do you think?
What's that? How long? I would say,
yeah.
I keep saying, I keep doing one of these things and saying 90. Yeah. Okay. The truth of the matter, that's a plus or minus, right? Like you could see this thing running 2 hours. You could see this thing running 75 minutes, depending. I think that it's much more likely to land in that 90 to 100, something like that. But that's all instinct. And, it's harder to tell a shorter story than it is a longer story.
It is, right? And maybe you could always wrap up a longer story in an extended cut, in an exclusive for those who actually donated to the documentary, et cetera, et cetera. Wrap up some sort of bundle for them, right?
I think that that story will extend beyond the walls of the documentary.
I do too. I just don't know how or where you're going to use those yet.
Well, and so as a part of what we're doing, there's a goal and an aspiration to have an online platform that would offer education to people just as a place for getting started. Like, right. Cause right now we're talking about wanting to, enlighten you. Right. So like we can't edutain you because we can't educate you on the entirety of the space in one documentary. It just can't be done. It'd be a disservice. Plus that's not the goal of the film. Right. But we do want to enlighten you and then encourage you to go learn, right? To go do the deep dive, to do the work that is true for who you are and I think that, having a place that serves that gives people, bite-size opportunities to learn more about specifics within cryptocurrency and then to learn more about the people in that world as well. Would be
I think that'd actually be pretty incredible. I don't think I've ever thought of that before. Is make both a platform that would be education based, but allow for true, genuine testimonials of success within. I think probably just start with the Hex project, but then move on to the entire space itself. Because that would, that's why. Okay, like why does somebody? Let's decode this for a second. What is one of the main reasons why a Twitter account will blow up overnight? Well, if they start posting P&L, like that's the easiest road to like blow up to 10, 20, 30,000 followers on Twitter within the crypto space. Similar on YouTube, right? Like the minute I go and talk about I made $1 million, I made $1 billion off of NFTs, my video is going to get a lot of views, right? So that, that success, that again, that money piece does sell. I think that would actually be fantastic to like mix the two in one area. Whereas right now it's very fragmented from the standpoint of like, how many different places do I have to go to get my inspiration or motivation for crypto? I have to go to, 4 or 5 different social media platforms. So that is really interesting. I like that idea. I love it actually. That would be phenomenal. Okay. So I was going to ask with the antagonist, if all else fails, are you going to just kind of default on like the system and Big Brother kind of thing? No, you don't like that?
No, because it takes, someone has to represent that. Like we need a, right? Like we can't, it's not, we won't whitewash it to, the larger institutional kind of a thing. It needs to be represented. A single person needs to represent those institutions. So we won't make that. We won't default to that. We will definitely continue to hold ourselves accountable to humanizing this and making it a people's story.
Yeah, I mean, I even think like there's a place for, I don't know if they would personally do it, but I even think there's a place for the people who have come onto the streams and attempted to come at Richard. Most of them, I would say, have been pretty badly embarrassed. I don't know if they would actually come back for another round, or like when he's not in the room, be able to tell their side of the story and tell it differently than maybe it went down. But I even think that there would be value in that, just because it speaks to the cognitive dissonance that I hope people can pick up on a film like this. Like, one of the things I hope people can walk away with is that, speculating and investing and putting your money into something is largely bias. It's largely groupthink. It's largely these things that you think to be true. Now, they might not be true. They might be true. But knowing that and understanding and seeing that in somebody else, to where you can point out like these different cognitive fallacies, helps you see them better within yourself. Right. And I think that that's all part of like education, where it's like, give them what they want, but really give them what they need.
Mm-hmm.
Those little tiny micro nuggets, while it's giving this broad, amazing story as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, for us, that remains the goal of this piece, is to explore each one of those curiosities. Right, that are represented in this story in such a big and powerful way. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's real truth in wanting to make sure that everything is represented and everything gets explored. And when we do that through the lens of this specific experience, it will be a fantastic story.
Yeah, I do too. And what I'd love to see is if you guys run out of space with like telling the let's call them the success stories, whatever, within the documentary itself, is maybe just release those as like some sort of, I don't know, YouTube thing or something, some additional stuff that can be released where they're just like the story of these people, right?
Yeah,
I think that would be incredible.
And we're hopeful, that the resources of the film will afford us to be able to do those kinds of things, because we agree with you. We think that, there are a number of stories here that are definitely worth telling, that the constraint of a feature-length documentary are just going to, unfortunately, require us to exclude. But it doesn't mean that they don't need to be created, made, explored, and shared. So yes, we agree.
Yeah, 100%. I think at some point I'll probably attempt to submit my story, because kinetics in my story are similar but different. We got in about the same time. He joined my community, and we were both like brand new to this stuff, and we made similar stupid mistakes in the beginning. And then he went one direction. We went through all like the Ponzi scheme stuff, like BitConnect and stuff, and then he went and found Hex, and then I went down this completely different rabbit hole. I went down learning how to trade. I went down ICOs and what came in 2018, 2019, had huge drawdowns, hundreds of thousands of dollars in drawdowns, and actual realized losses, as it turned out, because I didn't understand what was going on. Kind of went off the deep end, went nuts into macroeconomics and figuring out like, I don't know, just like monetary policy and what did I miss, I guess, was like the big thing that I kept coming back to. And then finally middle of last year, I was still talking to Kinetics, and he kept bringing it up every once in a while. And then I finally looked at it right before a big payday, and that's when I got involved. So it's a little different than his. Yeah, but perfect timing for me, I'll tell you. Because I will say this, is if you are watching this video and you actively trade, just as well as I do, that having something over here that's like making gains is tied up. You don't really have to do anything with it. It's just doing its thing and chilling and making you money, does alleviate stress over here. Like when you look at your portfolio, when you look at how much money you've got and everything is bleeding, you can't help but be stressed out, right? It'd be like if your real estate was taking a crap, your stocks were taking a dump, your crypto was taking a dump, your metals were taking a dump. It's like, where do I go, right? You're going to probably find me at the gambling hall, you know, trying to take out my emotions at that point. So when you've got something that is performing, or that you know is going to perform, that you know is kind of locked up and secured, you definitely move through trading in a different way, but you also move through the world in a different way. And so I love the fact that out of this, hopefully it will spin crypto in a positive light, right? Like the attacks that are coming now and what will come next is all the same attacks that are put on the legacy markets, but they're going to be just directed at Bitcoin. Like we've already seen this, the energy attacks, there's going to be the inclusive attacks that are going to come next. There's the whatever you can fill in the blank attacks that'll come, which will be perfect for those trying to legislate and regulate, because they will say, well, now you raised your hand and said and begged us to come into this space that we have no right to touch. And so now we're going to protect you, we're going to help you. And I just think that's a pretty slippery slope with some of the stuff that I'm sure they'll try and scheme and scam on top of crypto. So a project like this, I think, is really important regardless of if you like Hex, if you don't. The argument at this point is just so silly to me that a space that was all supposed to be like the tip of the spear is so divided and it's so cliquey, right? It's like, just to kind of go on a tangent for a second, it's like, and something that you see common on Twitter is that, people get called out for like shilling coins and not disclosing, or pumping and dumping on their followers. And everyone points at the big YouTubers, but they don't point at, the OG Twitter account handles that kind of do the same thing, but they're just buddies with everybody, right? And nobody really talks about that. Like what I talked about earlier on is these new like kind of NFT clicks. And there's a ETH click now, which is like all the people that actually move big sizable transactions on ETH are all 100 millionaire to billionaires now. And so like, again, why would they ever update that chain if it's run by billionaires? Like it'd be in their best interest to not change that. If the banks really cared about customers first, then they would have changed the banking system long ago, right? But they haven't. So that should tell you it's pretty similar here. But yeah, it's just weird that there's so many. It started off as such a pure thing, I think. And now it's just kind of turned into the same cliquey mess that you've got in traditional finance and in legacy markets, right? It's like the same thing, just duplicated over here. And everyone's still pretending like it's different. Like, oh no, we're so edgy, we're so, ahead of the curve. It's like, it's the same shit, dude. But you're like 21 and you think that you're at the, tip of the spear, but you're really not anymore.
I definitely am being educated in the space and making a lot of similar observations. So yes, I get exactly what you're sharing.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so where are we at here? We're about 50 minutes in.
So I just have to. I didn't know when I was going to call this out. Can a man get a couple more tabs going, please?
Yes. Oh.
Your browser. Oh my good Lord.
Yeah.
Man.
I usually hide that.
Up there?
When I shoot video, I usually hide that. All right. Somebody brought this up like that. Somebody brought this up like the first live stream I did. Let me tell you something. Here is the trick, my friends. I went and bought this and built this brand new computer earlier this year before graphics cards got absolutely retarded. But I built this so that I could have 200 tabs open at one time. I could have Photoshop, Premiere open. I can have Telegram open, Discord open. I've got probably 6 different browsers, maybe 700 tabs open. That's why you build a fast computer. You don't do it for gaming.
All right,
who's gaming? Remarkable. Who's gaming on a computer? That's just weird, dude. This is ultimate laziness right here. That's what this is.
I don't know.
Ultimate laziness.
Laziness or efficiency, right? I mean, it's all semantic.
Yeah, it's all in the eye of the beholder, right?
It is, right? I've been told if you want something done quickly, you go to the most lazy employee and have them do it because they'll figure out how to do it in the most efficient way possible. So I don't know if there's any truth in that, but I mad respect.
I think there is some truth in it. Yes, there is some truth in it. Okay, what's crazy? And I don't know if anyone's going to believe me, but I could tell you all the shit that's open too.
Well, of course you can. Of course you can. No, I believe you 100%. You don't do that up top if you don't know where to get where you go.
Because why would you do it?
Like you would never do that and then have to scroll through to find it. No,
Correct.
It's you being like, oh, this is here and this is here and I got this and ding, ding, ding. Oh no, yeah, 100%. I know you have that on lock.
Yes. The only downside of it is, you get going and lost down the YouTube rabbit hole, and I tag it. So I open it in a new tab to tag it like I want to watch that later. That's the only like inefficiency,
Sure.
I guess I've got in this whole system is like you see like 10 of the tabs are probably more than 10 of the tabs are like YouTube, but that's just because it's like, oh, I found this, let me open that.
Sure.
And I don't have a better way of doing it. So I download them sometimes. Sometimes I just try and save them in like my Trello or something for later, but it just doesn't work the same as just like open the new tab, because then I get annoyed that I've got so many tabs.
Sure.
And then I got to go back to it.
Right.
So it's like,
and
when
pain
you
and
want to
pleasure. Clean them up, it forces you to make that decision at that time. Yeah.
Yes. And if they've sat long enough and I haven't touched them, then it's like, all right, I gotta let you go.
Right, it's a purge. Right, exactly.
Yes.
You didn't make it. It's a catch and release on that one.
Which is it's sort of a spiritual thing, when you go through it. It's a cleansing. It's a cleansing thing.
Satisfying. Satisfying.
Absolutely. Okay, so a couple quick plugs for Grant and the Muse Storytelling is head on over to thehighestofstakes.com. You can still donate, right? You can still submit your story.
We
contribute.
Additional contributions, and you get your name in the credits, and all of those things still remain same, but definitely contribute to the stories, like offering any ideas and leads you have.
I think that'd be great. And you know what? I even challenge those who watch and that don't like Hex. Wouldn't it be in your best interest to submit the most authentic, pure story that you possibly could to persuade people that, hey, crypto is great, but Hex isn't? I think it would. I argue it would be. And so like 100%. Come with the story though, not the emotions. Like you're going to have to, I think it'd be valuable, and you would want the same done for something you believed in, to go beyond like, it's a scam because I don't like it, or it's a scam because I said so. It's a scam because this. Like if we're trying to summarize this thing in one sentence, I don't think it deserves that. I think it deserves much more detail. So if you've got that and you want to share it and your perspective, I think perspective is great, whether it's good or bad. Like you're still usually able to walk away from it with something that some takeaway. The only time you really can't, and this is like a part of the human condition that I think sucks, and we all fall guilty of it, is when you get into like that whole shouting match with somebody, and you've passed like coherent sentences, and it's like a cussing match, or it's like really beyond coming back to some sort of good in a conversation. I think when you've gotten to that point, you're no longer serving a good direction, which we've all done that. But if we can stay clean and stay on topic and stay on point, I think that those are hugely valuable. And two people that come together that are able to communicate properly is a beautiful thing to watch. So yeah, I would just encourage like anyone that you love this, you don't love it, whatever, everything in between, to submit some sort of story that you think will positively benefit, because it's the entire crypto space that this is going to be talking about. Right. So we kind of all have a duty, Yep,
100%. Exactly. And an opportunity. Really that's the other, truth of it. So.
Yes, I am the tab man. Okay. Any questions? Let's do this. Let's jump to the chat. Any questions for Grant before he bails? I know that you've been doing like making the rounds on Hex streams.
Yep, for sure. It's fantastic. It's been great to engage and have people ask their questions and just to, make sure that everyone knows that, we remain open to communication at all times. So, reach out either through the website or through Twitter, which is THOS documentary. Okay. So that's the handle, at THOS documentary, the highest of stakes, for those that haven't deconstructed.
Are you, let me ask you this. I got a question for you. Do you feel like, you said that you were kind of like a crypto noob when you came into this? Are you feeling like you've learned a lot about just crypto in general so far? Or
I'm drinking from a fire hose, baby.
Yeah, right? You're going to be a glorified expert after this.
Yeah, we're taking it in now. I can tell you that, no doubt. Yeah. So and I would acknowledge that I still feel like I have so much additional that I'm wanting to learn, right? And this education, I guess, in truth, is in parallel, right? There's the education of crypto, and then there's the education of the Hex experience and story. And right now we're getting them both full bore, right? Like we're, whereas if we were coming in to singularly study crypto and the blockchain experience, then, and remove ourselves from all of the story finding for Hex and that story, it would be a lot less, right? Like I wouldn't feel quite the overwhelm that we do at the moment, but it's the perfect place to be in, right? Like,
Yeah.
We know we're really on to something. If you think about, if we think of ourselves as like a truffle pig and Story are the truffles, you know what I mean? Or whatever, we are hitting right now. So yeah, that's a great place to be in.
Yeah, I bet. Let me ask you this. Are you sold on the benefits of a decentralized finance system? Has your viewpoints, let me ask you this, has your viewpoints on money and currency changed since you've gotten involved? Because you said you didn't know much coming in, so now you know more.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, personally, in addition to being a filmmaker, I'm a real estate investor. And I've held a portfolio of single-family residential rental units.
Cool.
Yeah, the better part of 15 years now, and so I understand that space. And I'm sure that there are others that do it much better than I do, and there are others who have done it much worse. But I know that space. I did not know the space of, investing in crypto in order to see gains. Had kind of watched and seen it ancillary from the sidelines, you know what I mean, or whatever, and had fallen victim, to the risk narrative that was, that kind of has permeated that environment and landscape for all too long, I think. And I think that there are, unfortunately, a larger number of projects that have proven to either be completely risky or straight frauds that have wrecked people on a level that now I understand why, those with access to journalistic or media type of storytelling would be contributing to that narrative of risk. You know what I mean? I think in a way very responsibly as well. But on the flip side of it, there are very few stories that I think that have transcended that, are authenticating the need to be educated in the space and the opportunities that exist when one is. And difference, right? And so, yes, that's kind of how my, personal experience has been shaped by, all of this story discovery and being a part of this project.
Which I think is great for you, because that's putting you ahead of the curve of like this Web 3.0 direction that things are going, which is kind of an emergence of decoupling the financial aspects of how a business operates and how a business runs, and putting it on a completely different system. So that, like, there has to be some sort of next step to this, right? Like, crypto was, I think, the foundation to something much bigger, whether it ends up being Web 3.0, 4.0, whatever, but there is definitely like this clear next big step that's about to be taken. Whereas if you don't understand the fundamentals, like what is blockchain? What are we doing? What is all this craziness on Etherscan? If you don't at least understand the basics of that, it's going to be like, I don't know, I think it might be one of the biggest technological jumps we've ever done, right? Because if you think about it, like cell phones weren't that big of a jump. Apps were. Like an app store, an Android phone, an iPhone, those were the big jumps where you lost it with your grandma and grandpa. Like they don't know what's going on with that kind of a cell phone. But a flip phone, they were still on board, right? Like they could still kind of hang with you on those phones, like the Razr flip phone. Gosh, I remember those. But then as soon as things jump to like, well, wait a second, it's like contained in this icon, and in this icon is its own little world. Like that's the way I used to describe it to like my parents and stuff when it was brand new to them, is I just said, like, look, think of it like this. There's all these little icons on your phone are like little islands, and you jump into the island and you get to explore that entire island. Like I just try and come up with little analogies that would help them, right? Understand like at a very Barney level of what this is doing, and like what you can now do in this. And then like, let's come back out and like, obviously talk about important stuff like security. But I think that Web 3.0, man, like if you aren't already in the know of this stuff, I think it's going to be such a huge jump.
Yeah,
that's great for you guys.
Well, it is. And I think that it's great to be a part of encouraging and accelerating the number of people that will be made aware of that. And that is, as a storyteller, that's a tremendously satisfying position to be in.
Yeah, it is.
To be like, you know what, let's go create and share a story that we hope will help influence people seeking this
Yeah.
education, right? And then also, if I extend that into, say, the experience of my boys, as a father and raising them, I know that the opportunity that they have if they educate themselves on this is just amplified, like in a way that like could change their entire lifestyle, could change the way that they greet the world, could change the way that that they're interacting, creating, and what they choose to do, and with what freedoms they're able to do that. So, that's tremendously interesting.
It is. Hey,
personally, so.
Yeah, 100%. And I really think that this documentary, and at this point in time, it's going to go down in history. I don't really know to what size yet, but like this point in time in this entire last 3-4 years, I feel like chronologically is going to serve as such an important point in time and marker in time down the road. But we're not going to really see the power of that for probably like 10 or more years. And then we'll be able to look back and be like, wow, that was crazy back then for whatever reason. And it might just be like, wow, there were so many dog coins launching. There was so many, so many people getting rich. It was so easy to make money back then. I don't know if it's just going to be like that kind of simple thing, or if it's going to be like bigger than that. I personally feel like it's going to be a bigger look back than that. It won't just be like, man, you could have gotten so rich back then, blah, blah, blah. But there'll be a lot more pieces there that was like, man, that was really setting up for the next big thing,
Yep.
So I'm excited to be a part of this, all of this. The whole crypto community.
I've heard people in the community describe pre-doc and post-doc, which I think is an interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know what I mean? Measure in time as well. So we shall see. Who knows, right? Who knows? TBD. But it's all cool conversation.
It is. And this was a lot of fun. And I thank you so much for jumping on. Fairly
pleasure.
Short notice. I know that we scheduled this up pretty quick, but thank you so much for coming on. Guys, thank you for jumping on the stream with us. Grant, again, that's the heistofstakes.com if you want to go and check that out, or if you haven't already, contribute, donate with at least a story, some shares, some social shares. That's always free, and you can help out with the project. Whether you like it or not, you're helping get more eyes on it, which will help more stories get contributed, right?
Correct, 100%.
All right, thanks again. See you guys. We'll see you next week on another stream.
Bye.